My name's Doug Binns. I am a cybersecurity professional. I've been working for Trend Micro now for about 7 years. They actually acquired an organization that I was part of, Tipping Point, and I've been working for the Tipping Point organization for about 14 years now. I've got about 30 years of experience in the IT and cybersecurity industry. So I've got a little bit of knowledge, I think, about some of the topics we're going to cover tonight. I also have 3 grown adult children. One of them's not quite as grown; he's only 18, still living at home, but we'll be pushing him out pretty soon. So I've also got some experience guiding kids on the use of technology over the years from all sorts of different age groups. And I've also been a scout leader for many years. So I've interacted with youth groups at various ages as well. So I've got some experience to bring to the table. I'll be happy to answer as many questions as I can as we go along. So just make sure that you get those questions posted as we go. One other thing, if you're just joining us and you prefer to listen along in Spanish, we do have an interpreter on the line, Gigi. If you find the globe icon identified on this slide in the lower left-hand corner, that should be somewhere in your Zoom settings. You can click on that globe icon and you can hear Gigi's audio stream. She will be interpreting our entire presentation from end to end, so you should be able to follow along with her as well. Welcome to everyone in attendance to our Family Tech Talk night. As I said, go ahead and click that globe icon if you prefer to listen in Spanish. We're here to talk about some cybersecurity topics for families and specifically on how to guide our youth, I think, and how to guide them into becoming better digital citizens in their use of technology and the internet. I've already introduced myself. Again, my name is Doug Binns. I've got a couple of decades in this industry, so I've got some experience that I think I'd like to share with you tonight. Here's a list of all the schools that should be in attendance. And again, give a shout out to your school in the chat if you'd like, but definitely make sure that you follow those links and sign up so that we can get a good attendance count to give back to your school coordinator for this event. I've kind of gone over the sign-in and the interpretation audio already. We do have a program that runs about 80 to 90 minutes. I can definitely talk longer on any particular topic if need be. Believe me, I can probably go hours on any given topic that we go over, but I try to keep it within that 80 to 90 minute time frame. We've got some people that are registered from the East Coast. I'm sure that they don't want to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning having this discussion, so I'll try to keep it as tight to our schedule as possible. There is going to be a recording available for this session, and those are usually provided back to your school coordinators once they have been finalized and edited, and we'll be able to provide those. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to submit them in the question and answer section of Zoom. If you start posting them into chat, sometimes the questions will get lost in chat and we won't be able to answer them. So please post your questions in the Q&A section. And then at the very end, there is going to be a survey made available to you. We encourage you to take that survey. It always helps us identify areas where we can improve and areas where we've been excelling. We always like to make these presentations better and more relevant to our audiences. So please give us some feedback through that survey that's available at the end of the event. But first, let's start with some questions for you. We're going to pop up a survey here. We want to know, how old is your oldest child? This helps us tailor our conversation to the needs of our audience for tonight's session. First answer is going to be A, 5 years old or younger, B, 6 to 10 years old, C, 11 to 14 years old, or D, 15 years or older. So I encourage you to go ahead and start making your selections in there. And then we can go ahead and kind of tailor our conversation based on that once we have the results. All right, do we have the results in? Okay, here we go. Looks like most of our audience has 6 to 10-year-olds, and I think coming in a close second is going to be the 11 to 14-year-olds, and that's actually pretty common for these discussions. Know that for those of you who have students in that in those age groups, we also have the ability to come into classrooms in some areas where we have volunteers. We have some in-classroom, in-person presentations that we can give that are aged appropriate for those age groups as well. But let's talk about what we need from this presentation, what we're hoping to gain. I know that the 6 to 14-year-old range is probably some of the most influential years of a youth's life. They get a lot of input and feedback from their parents. They get a lot of input and feedback from their teachers, and a lot of input and feedback from their peer groups. So let's see if we can make that the most productive time that we have with our kids at that age. So let's talk about what you're interested in hearing about. What are you most interested in discussing? A, managing screen time for my kids. B, helping my kids with stick to age-appropriate content. C, dealing with online bullying or hate. D, getting ideas for positive uses for the internet. And E, not sure, just here to learn something new. So let's go ahead and take that poll real quick. We'll give you a couple of moments to answer that. And I think we've closed that poll. So managing screen time for my kids and helping kids stick to age-appropriate content are our two winners. I'm surprised we had 0 on the dealing with bullying and hate. We will touch on that topic a little bit, but I guess I'm happy to see that we're not terribly concerned with it. But know that even if even there isn't a big concern, you still want to be able to know how to act and react to some of that as well. So we'll talk about screen time, and we'll talk about age-appropriate content a little bit more than some of the other topics tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. We like to talk a lot about digital citizenship, and one of the things that we try to focus on is promoting digital citizenship, but we kind of have to define what that is first. A lot of people come to our presentations looking for ways to keep their kids safe, ways to keep to protect their kids, ways to lock down the devices and prevent harm. But our approach is a little bit different than just putting these hard lines in place that block the content and prevent the kids from gaining access to things. What we prefer to do is try to help educate our kids, because it's not just about keeping the kids safe. It's about making sure that we as adults are educated on how to educate our kids. We don't want to scare you. There's plenty out there to scare you, but we'd rather help you coach your kids, your youth, into being good digital citizens. So what we talk about when we talk about digital citizenship is not only do we talk about the safety and the security and how to manage that, but we also want to spend some time talking about digital literacy. We want the kids to know how to use their devices, their tablets, their phones, their computers, their console systems, but how to use them in a safe manner, and do some self-regulation at the same time on how often do I use it, when can I use it, how long, what types of duration. how to use it safely. What am I presenting out there when I use it? We go into the discussion about ethics and community, how to best use our internet services and our devices to not only improve ourselves, but also to help our community, our friends, our peer groups. And then we also talk about mastering these skills. And the approach that we've taken for many years with this program is to talk about how to properly be online, being safe, being kind, and being savvy. These are kind of the 4 pillars that we focus on in our discussion. Obviously, we're going to be online. It's the internet, like cars. Once upon a time, we didn't have cars. Somebody had to learn how to operate cars, and we developed programs and regulations and education services on how to operate them safely. The internet is no different. Once upon a time, we didn't have the internet. Most children under the age of 18, I think, at this point in their lives, grew up in a world where the internet has always existed. So let's learn about how to be online, how to do it safely. How do we set up the environment? How do we set up the rules? How do we provide a good example ourselves towards our children about how to use the internet? We talk about being safe. That includes keeping private information private, how to set privacy settings, how to protect ourselves from those that want to potentially do us harm or collect information about us. So we have that discussion as well. We talk about being kind, not only to others, but to ourselves. Youth can easily misuse the internet to unintentionally do harm to themselves. So we want to educate the youth as well as the parents on how to educate the youth on how to be kind to themselves and to others as well. And then, of course, being savvy, developing the good habits, developing the knowledge of how to use the internet for good things rather than detrimental activities. So we focus on all of those different aspects during our discussion tonight. And when we go into the schools and have these discussions with the elementary schools and the middle schoolers, and in a little more infrequently the high schoolers, we touch on these same topics as well. We tailor the conversation more to the age group that's when it's appropriate. So let's dive into the environment, setting up the environment. I don't know if y'all live in the same world that I do, but a couple years ago, we were driven into this world where we had a pandemic. Everybody was pushed out of their offices and their workspaces. We had to adjust to working from home. So a lot of things came along with that. How do we use our homes now as offices and schools? How do we set up our technology to allow us to communicate with our businesses and our teachers? So some of those topics may have surfaced around that time for many. So one thing that we talk about doing is setting up a good physical environment for our physical health. You want to have an environment where you are setting up your computer equipment, your tablets, your devices in a manner that's conducive to good posture, good ergonomics, having the screens at the right height, making certain that that your equipment is accommodating to the proper ergonomics. You're sitting upright. You've got the right keyboard, the right mouse for your environment. Your desk is at the right height. Some people will purchase the desks that can raise and lower so you can stand and sit periodically throughout the day, so you're not always in a seated position. Some of the things on the slide now talk about some of those items. One thing in particular, the eyes, the lighting. You want to have good, adequate lighting for your environment. You don't want dark, dim lighting. You want to have good, appropriate lighting so you can see your keys, your papers, the screen. You want the screen set up to where it's an appropriate brightness. You want to use blue light filters on your screen if you can. All these LEDs that we use in all of our screens and our devices, they actually have, there are studies that have proven that they overstimulate the neurons in our brain. It can cause anxiety, sleeplessness, and other things that are real world health hazards. So Make sure that you're adjusting the filters on your screens to eliminate the blue light. If you can't do that easily, they do have blue light glasses you can buy. If you wear lenses, whether they're glasses or contacts, you can also get a film included on your glasses now that eliminate that blue light from your vision as well. As you're sitting there working throughout the day in front of a computer screen, you tend to get this hard focus that can actually cause eye stress, and which can result in headaches, anxiety, sleeplessness. So we recommend using the 30-30-30 rule, which is every 30 minutes, take at least a 30-second break and focus on something that's about 30 feet away. That way you're not always at the same distance of focus with your eyes. I take it a step further. I get up every 30 minutes and leave my computer space. Obviously, you can't do that when you're in a meeting or something like that. But once that meeting's done, take a couple of minutes of break. It's real easy for me to do. I've got a couple of dogs. They're always whining to go outside and play. So I just go out back and I run around with them. It gives me an opportunity to get up, move my body, and you know, our bodies are made to move. You can't look at any group of kids under 7 or 8 years old and see them not moving. So we constantly want to move. So let our bodies move, get some exercise, take those breaks, stretch a little bit. If you have to take a yoga break in the middle of the day, take the dogs for a walk, something, get up and move around once in a while. It will definitely help with your physical health and not keep you too long in one spot. For your network, we're talking now about the physical devices that are connected, starting with the router. That's kind of your point of entry between the rest of the world and your household. Routers serve as your gateway to the internet. So you want to make sure that you limit access to your router. When you first get it set up, it's hard to believe, but there's tons and tons of people out there that still to this day will not change the initial default settings on their routing devices. If your cable company set up your router for you, you still may want to go in and adjust the settings for that. I actually recommend use the cable company's router and then get another router on the inside that you have control of. Cable companies and DSL companies and internet service providers are notorious for not keeping their devices up to date with the current software updates. So add another layer of protection by getting your own internal wireless router on the inside of your cable modem, your cable, your internet service provider's device. Separate the network. Most modern routers today, all those wireless devices that you buy for your home, you can go in and you can have a private network and you can have a guest network. We recommend splitting that. Some more sophisticated routers are capable of actually splitting that multiple ways. So you end up with 2 or 3 SSIDs available. But if you set up a guest network, you can keep all of your personal private stuff on your private network, the stuff for work, the stuff for your personal household items, such as your personal computer, your network file share, and stuff that you really want to keep private, you keep that on a private network. The guest network would be reserved for all of your personal devices, like cell phones, the stuff that's going to frequently go out in the world and potentially become compromised. Cell phones, tablets, gaming laptops, gaming consoles, friends' cell phones and tablets when they come into your house and they need internet access off your Wi-Fi. That's the one that you connect them to. That will keep them from being able to access all of your personal data on your private network. Using a Wi-Fi extender, that is something that we recommend if you're struggling with getting wireless signal to all corners of your house. Sometimes it's a simple adjustment of where you place your Wi-Fi router in the house. Other times, if you can't physically move it to a better location, getting a Wi-Fi extender that works with your wireless router is an option. Look at the settings on those though, and make sure that you are not overextending the reach of your wireless network. The Wi-Fi signal, take your cell phone out to the street edge and see if you can get a good solid signal at the street. If you can, maybe you want to adjust the settings so that the signal strength isn't quite so high. Or maybe you want to adjust the physical location of your router. Know that if you're living in apartments or if you're going out to shared spaces like coffee shops and whatnot, when you're on those wireless networks, you want to make sure that you have some protections built into your device. We'll talk a little bit about that later too. But when you're on shared networks that you don't own, that you don't control, then know that you have a potential opportunity to be compromised there. Somebody could potentially get into your devices or your equipment if you're on somebody else's network. So bandwidth is sometimes a concern depending on your internet service provider. Sometimes you don't have enough bandwidth to be doing work while the kids are playing games and your spouse is streaming a movie in the other room. So stagger the time use of your network. Make sure that homework time and work time is for homework time and work time. Maybe what you do is you have the kids doing homework at the kitchen table while mom and dad are preparing dinner. Mom and dad aren't using the internet at that time, but the kids can be for something productive. And then make recreational use time after dinner, where we're on our personal devices, or we're streaming that movie, or we're getting together as a family to have popcorn and movie night, stuff like that. Stagger the use to best fit your needs so that you're not running into bandwidth constraints and introducing congestion and latency in your home network. Setting up the environment, I started to touch on this a little bit. You want to use security software on every device that you've got, whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, a game console. Every device you've got in your household has some sort of security features that you as the parent in the household need to go and identify and start using if you're not already doing it. Most routers are going to have a firewall. If they don't, you need to get a firewall. The firewall is going to be a software setting or a device that limits ingress into your network. You get to choose what can come in and what can go out. It can sometimes, some of the more advanced ones can manage the content that is allowed into your network and what's requested off of your network. So find that firewall setting at the edge of your network on your wireless devices, or your internet service provider devices, and make sure that's turned on and enabled. If you don't have that, install firewall software on your computers, on your tablets, on your cell phones. I still encourage that to be done because sometimes you take those portable devices outside of your personal network that you control. Use strong passwords. It sounds like something that everybody should say, duh, but you know what? One of the top used passwords in the world today is still the word password. I don't know why, but it is. I think it's in the top 5 of still used passwords. We'll touch on how to come up with strategies to develop good, strong passwords here in a minute. Using multi-factor authentication. It seems like an annoyance, but it gives the bad guys an extra step that they have to overcome when they're trying to break into your stuff. So on websites that support multi-factor authentication, make sure that you enable it. What it allows you to do is you type in your username and password, and then the website will either request a code from some authentication app that you have running on your phone, or they will send you some sort of secondary code that you have to then enter into their website, either through a text message or through an email. Enable those multi-factor authentication steps because, like I said, the bad guys are looking for the low-hanging fruit, the easy pickings. And the more security that you put in between the bad guys and your stuff, the less likely they are going to be chasing after you to try and compromise you. Using a virtual private network. This kind of goes, I still recommend this, but it's kind of a special use case. VPNs are really kind of a point-to-point protection. So if you're connecting from your house to your office and you want to make sure that that connection is secure, it will allow you to encrypt that traffic between your home and your office, and gain access to the resources in your office. There are also public VPNs that you can pay for that allow you to encrypt your traffic between your house and that VPN service provider. What happens beyond that VPN service provider, though, may not necessarily be fully encrypted depending on what sites and what services you're visiting. So just know that you're encrypting from your initiation point to the termination point of that VPN, but you may not be encrypting everything beyond the termination point of that VPN. So one way that it can be helpful, though, is if you're trying to anonymize yourself. If you want to hide your ISP's provided IP address on your home network, using a VPN can help anonymize that and hide where you're coming from. It can make it look like if you live in California, you can make it look like you're coming across an internet connection in, say, Philadelphia or something like that. So there is a way to use VPNs for anonymization, but it's not necessarily 100% secure once you get past your VPN provider's endpoint. So just be aware of that. Set up the environment for everyday use. You need to update, and I can't stress this enough. My job would be so much easier if people would just update everything. Every product that comes out to the market, software or hardware, portable device or server that goes into a data center, has some sort of a bug in it that needs to be protected against. As those bugs are identified, if they can provide some sort of a vulnerability that can be exploited, the manufacturers of those software products and the hardware products will typically provide those updates to the general public, and you want to make sure that those are updated as quick as you can. I recommend maybe making a single day every month, set a reminder for yourself to go through all of your devices and update them to the latest software, and make sure you got the latest firmware, the latest updates, the latest security patches, etc. That goes for every operating system on every device, Windows or Linux, Android or iOS, every device in your household, even down to your thermostat if you have it tied to the internet. If it's got software running on it, you want to make sure that you know how to update it and take the time to update it regularly. It's the unpatched, unupdated systems that the bad guys are really going to be targeting to exploit and gain control of. Passwords. Don't use personal information. Don't use dictionary words for passwords. I cannot stress that enough. Like I said, password is still one of the most commonly used passwords in the world today. And one easy way to overcome that is to make sure that all of your passwords are at least 8 or more. I personally recommend 12 or more characters long. Mix of letters, numbers, and punctuation, special characters. Here's a simple mnemonic, kind of a way to teach youngsters how to develop a good password. In this case, a few years ago, the stores ran out of toilet paper. So we started throwing this phrase out there: might need to buy more toilet paper soon. And if you take the first letter and the digit 2 out of that phrase and combine them all, uppercase, lowercase mix, it gives you a good password that would be hard to guess. And it would take a computer, quite honestly, because there's, I think, what is that, 9 characters to that? It would take a computer quite some time to process in a brute force attempt to bypass that password. So again, making it harder for the bad guys makes the bad guys move on to an easier target in most cases. So teach your kids how to come up with creative ways of coming up with passwords, using sentences or phrases, and mixing up the letters and numbers and punctuation in them. Um, learn how to use backup services and backup products to protect your data. One of the biggest threats in the world today is still ransomware. All it takes is for you to click the wrong link in an email to accidentally download something, the wrong link in a text message to accidentally download something, and then that bad guy owns that device, and they can kind of install whatever they want on it. So if you don't keep your backups of your important sacred files, all those pictures you have of your kids as they grow up, you got to store those offline. Get a good offline hard drive that you can back stuff up to regularly. Learn how to use it. You can use cloud-based backup services as well. Some of those are going to be automatic. Just know that when you set up those backup services, set it up with the two-factor authentication, complicated passwords. Make sure that you have ways of getting back into it if you lose those passwords or those pass keys that they use, and make sure that you do everything you can to keep those services, those backup cloud services, from also being compromised. I like keeping my stuff, my really important stuff, offline on a hard drive that I can put in a safe deposit box or a safe at home, and keep it protected in that way. If it's completely offline, they have to have physical access to the device in order to gain access to the contents. So use of tech tools is going to help us with a lot of different things. I keep looking over the Q&A section. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm not seeing a lot of discussion in the chat either. If you come up with anything, I'll be happy to pause to answer direct questions as well. So if you come up with anything, please let me know. Age appropriate content, in-app purchases, time online, monitors. There's all sorts of different applications, and there's different tools that are available in every platform, whether it's a computer, whether it's a game console, whether it's a portable device. They all have their own little flavor of security component that you want to look for. And we recommend when you bring a new device or a new platform or a new game or software package into the house, if the kids are going to use it, we recommend turning it into a game. Get them to help you find the software settings that help them control their privacy and their security. You can definitely take control of those settings on their behalf, but if they learn where they are and they learn how to use them most effectively, again, adjust for your age group. I know we've got some younger kids that we're talking about, but if you learn alongside with them, you're going to help them learn to find those things that they need to look for in the next new version of whatever comes out, the next new Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok. When that next app hits the market, that becomes the viral app that everybody's using, they'll immediately know that they need to go look for those types of settings. So help them learn alongside of you for all of those settings. I see one question. Somebody came up with one. I'll touch on that real quick. The question is, how often is often to change password? In our industry, we tend to recommend at least every 90 days. That's about every 3 months. So you want to make sure that it's regular enough. Maybe your personal stuff you extend out to 120 days or 6 months. I wouldn't let it go any longer than that. Let me think for just a moment. I think we talked a little bit about password managers later, but I'll cover that again if I need to. I recommend using a password manager as well. What I do is I have a different password for every single site that I log into. I'm probably overly security conscious though, because of my industry. But I use a password manager to help me manage those dozens, if not hundreds, of passwords that I use on a regular basis. I have a methodology that I've developed over the years that helps me identify what password goes to what site. So I have most of them memorized, but for the handful that I don't log into regularly, I actually do use a password manager that I can refer to, extract the password or copy the password, and then paste it into the site. There's various password managers out there on the market. Do some research, find one that works best for you. Some of them use cloud storage, some of them are local storage, but you can use a password manager to help you manage the passwords. You can use a password manager also to help you create passwords that are fairly randomized and lengthy. And then you can also, some of those password managers also can give you reminders of when it's a good time to reset passwords. But again, as a general rule of thumb, I would say anywhere between 90 and 120 days. Keep that as a regular pace, and don't reuse passwords across multiple sites if you can avoid it. If I can manage to compromise one of your passwords, then I have essentially compromised all of your passwords if you're reusing the same password across multiple devices and sites. So use of tech tools for managing our use of devices. Apple has a great one. It's called iOS Screen Time. It helps you limit how long you're on the device. It helps you keep track of it. But these settings that they provide also can help you monitor the other devices that are within your purview, the kids' devices, your family's devices. It helps share that information so that you can have good conversations with your kids about spending too much time versus not enough time on certain activities. You can say you can recognize that they've been on Instagram too long and maybe haven't spent enough time on their homework, or maybe they're on their homework too long and haven't spent enough time getting some exercise. So we don't recommend using these as a babysitter, but rather to gather information so that you can have intelligent conversations with your family members. These diagrams kind of show you the method of getting into the screen time apps and seeing the reports. I'm not an Apple user, so I'm not familiar with all of these little settings that are in here, but there's content and privacy restrictions. It allows you to go through and manage what can be seen and by whom within the apps that you manage and the devices you manage. Android, Google has something similar. It's called Google Family Link. Again, it allows you to manage and monitor app permissions, what can be done on those devices. It can report on what's being used, filter apps that they can use. I think this one actually has the ability to track the device's location. So the device is in your kid's pocket, you can track where they are. And it allows you to also set up some geofencing. So if they move outside of the geographic area, you can be notified of that event occurring. If they're supposed to be over at a friend's house and they end up at a different friend's house, you can be alerted on that. So stuff like that is available in some of these tools. YouTube recently launched an opportunity to have what's called a supervised account. And there's different levels of this. I believe there's an explore more, and most of the internet setting that's available through the YouTube supervised account. And the explore is kind of geared for kids under 11, maybe 8 to 11. And it only shows content that's appropriate at that age group. The Explore More gives you a broader range of content availability for kids up to 11 to 14. And then the most of YouTube gives you access for that's more appropriate for kids that are like 14 to 17 years old. And of course, beyond that, you're getting into adult territory. If you're having these conversations throughout your child's growth, then hopefully you have developed them into a responsible adult, and they'll be able to manage a lot of these things on their own once they get to that age. And again, these are really kind of more like guidelines rather than hard lines. You as parents know what's best for your kids, and can manage all of this content appropriately for your desires and your kids' needs. So, in the chat, let me see a real quick yes or no. Who's allowing their kids to use TikTok? No, 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 no. I'm certain that I know I've seen some stuff in the news recently about TikTok, and we'll touch more on content and what's collected a little bit later. But TikTok does have the ability to also have a family pairing for those that may allow your youth to use TikTok for something. The almost unanimous answer in chat seemed to be no there, but if you do decide to let your kids use TikTok, know that they also have a family pairing tool that allows you to install TikTok on both your device and your child's device, and manage the restrictions. It allows you to limit the content and the time that they spend on that content. So if you go into the family pairing, you can enable that and set these settings appropriately on each device. And it allows you to set your time limits, the content, and assign those settings to specific users within that environment. Instagram has some similar settings. I don't think that they allow you to limit their time through Instagram, but always look back at these settings as you go along, because they continuously update these tools and these apps. But it does allow you to kind of monitor what they're spending time on when they're on Instagram, and who they're following and who's following them. So look at the Instagram Family Center and supervision settings. Again, my kids kind of graduated away from the Instagram. They've kind of settled on some other conversation mechanisms. Tech tools for Snapchat, they have some more monitoring features, but I don't think they have any real limiting features with the Snapchats. So you can kind of see what's going on, but you have to have real world conversations about what your concerns are with what's going on. So, but I don't think that you have direct control over what they're doing when it comes to the Instagram. I mean the Snapchat. Any of your kids use Roblox? I know Roblox is kind of popular with the tweens and teens. It's kind of a gaming development platform and communications mechanism. So it's got a little bit of both worlds there. But know that Roblox also has some features. I'm supposed to be an animation with this slide. Let me see if I can get it to go. There it goes. So in the Roblox settings, you can go and view the privacy settings and see what they're capable of sharing, what they are, and you can adjust what they're sharing and to whom through these security settings. It shows you whether or not you're sharing to the general public, with friends, to no one, etc. So, and you can set PIN numbers, and I encourage you to explore these settings and all of these tools that your kids are using. All these apps that hit your phones and your tablets, they all have similar settings to them. Go explore on your own, and then explore with your kids so that you can kind of guide them on what they have available to them. Discord is another communications app. A lot of times this is used more by the gamers and the streamers. And again, it has the same types of settings. It's probably more popular amongst the tweens and teens, but I think it's getting more of a following now by the younger generation because they're seeing their older siblings use it. And then that's carrying over to their peers when their peers see the younger siblings of the older siblings using it. So it's getting more of a following. But again, sharing settings, who they can share their personal information with, who they can communicate with. You want to go in here and find the block settings, the friends settings, and know what they're capable of sharing. The console systems also are going to have a lot of these types of settings as well buried in them. Get on the news groups and the interwebs and do a little bit of research on where these settings are. They have the ability to filter apps. They have the ability to limit screen time. One thing that we talk about a little bit when it comes to screen time also is when you're playing games, try and encourage your kids to play games that have hard stops. Like, for example, a sporting type game, there's going to be a time frame, like a quarter or a halftime or something, where you actually have a hard stop. The game ends at a certain point, as opposed to some of these other games where it's just a lot of the first-person shooter type games. It's just continuous and constant. You just can go on forever. What is it? The Minecraft is one of those games where you can just continuously play forever and ever and never actually come to a stop. So if you want to try and limit screen time, kind of encourage your kids to focus more on games that have a termination point. One thing that we also recognized is that with all these different devices and all these different settings, there's a way, there needs to be a way to help manage all of that together. And we provided a tool that allows you to help manage your iOS and your Android devices. This is free. It's available for download from tmfamily.care. It helps keep you aware of what's going on with your child's devices and what they're doing. Helps you provide guidance to the tasks that at hand, what they're using their devices for, who they're communicating with. It's got some really good tools for managing your devices, managing these settings, and developing protection strategies when they're using their portable devices across multiple platforms. So I'm going to take a quick breather, see if we have any questions. I'm not seeing any. So let's move on to setting the rules, the boundaries. We all want our kids to grow up understanding the rules and the boundaries. So we need to kind of develop that for them. And you can, if you choose, you can make them part of this conversation. What can they do? When can they do it? How long do they have to available to do it? Where they're going to be using their devices and with whom. We generally want the parents to identify the best things for their child, but keep these questions always in mind when you're having these discussions with your kids. Get them involved and help them by identifying what the best use of their time is. And what we recommend is kind of making a pie chart with 24 hours in the day. Fill up that pie chart with the various things that are important to your time. For example, what activities do we do that supports our health, such as sleeping, eating, and getting exercise, right? What part of that pie chart supports learning? Going to school, doing homework, reading, hobbies. Maybe for the adults, it's work would be the analog there. And then what part of the day supports our relationship, time with family, friends, and neighbors and peers, right? Now, what else do we fill that rest of that 24 hours with? You want to make sure that you're encouraging most of that 24 hours to be filled with these three items, of course, and then probably limiting the access to devices to that time that's left over. Kind of create this pie chart with your kids. One thing that I've done in the past, just to kind of gauge what my kids' perspective is on me and how much I'm using my devices, and how much time I'm spending on them, is I have them create this pie chart for me and ask them how much time I'm fitting into each of these categories. And sometimes that kind of makes it a little surprising to the adults, because they may not be aware of how they're presenting themselves to their kids, and what their kids' perspective is. So I would encourage you to go through and have that kind of conversation about how you're using your time and making sure that you're setting a good example. And if you're not certain if you're setting a good example, use that exercise, have the kids tell you what their perspective of your use of time is. Maybe you'll be surprised to find that you're spending more time on your devices than they are. So, or at least that's the case from their perspective. Kind of touched on setting the example. Define the rules for yourself, and then share those rules with the kids, and make sure that you're definitely kind of preaching what acting the way that you preach to the kids. And again, sometimes if you're in a household where you have well-established communication, maybe your kids will call you out on it as well. I know my 18-year-old loves to call me out when he thinks I'm breaking my own rules. So he has all of his life. So I'm certain that some of y'all probably have a kid in a household that's kind of like that too, somewhat outspoken. So we've talked a lot about being online already. Let's talk a little bit more about being safe and talking about the privacy, the information, and how to protect ourselves. Quick time check. I think I can get through the rest of this pretty readily. Protecting privacy and using privacy settings. You want to make sure that you find those settings in every app and every game and every tool that you use. Somewhere there's going to be a menu that you need to explore, and in that menu is going to be something that relates to how much content you're sharing. You want to make sure that you go through and find those settings, make sure that those settings aren't defaulted to being open to the world, and then you want to educate your kids, as I've stated many times, on how to set these settings that are most appropriate for you and your family. You don't want to be sharing too much personal information out there. And like I said, whenever you get a new game or a new app in the household, go ahead and encourage them to find those settings for you first and show you that they understand. Whenever you download something new, we've all done it. You go to the Apple Store or the Google Store or the Microsoft Store, and you download that new app, and this thing scrolls by and you just click accept. Well, what are we really accepting here? What you're accepting is providing personal information to a company that owns that app. You're being licensed, you're being provided a license to use their app under the condition that you share your information with them. That information is theirs to use however, whenever, and wherever they seem to choose. So be aware that when you click that accept button, that nothing that you submit to that app, to that software package, is private, okay? It is being shared with that company for certain. It's on their servers. So every image that you send out, every post that you send out, it's at least on that company's servers, regardless of who your intended audience was. They have access to that information in some form. So be aware of that and educate your kids to be aware of that. You want to make sure that you're protecting yourself from falling into pitfalls and traps. The bad guys are out there trying to convince you to give away information. They'll find your kids in chats in games like Fortnite or in other games that they might be playing. And they'll pretend to be something that they're not to entice your kids into having a conversation with them. They'll send out links in email and text messages. They'll post fake information out there to get you to click on things. And once you've clicked on something, you may have already been gotten. So we always say that if it's too good to be true, trust your gut, and expect that it's too good to be true, and don't click on it. Even as a cybersecurity professional, my kid has fallen victim to this as well. Maybe it was a couple of months ago now, he got a text message saying that his package was delayed. Click here to update his delivery information. He clicked on the link in a text message, took him to a website where it asked him to process a $1 delivery redelivery charge. He put in his debit card information, hit send, and then realized what he did and came to me immediately afterwards. We canceled his card. We protected his bank account after that. But even him having the education I've delivered to him over the years, he still made the mistake. So it can happen regardless of how much education you've given your kids. The more education you give them, the more savvy they're going to be, though. Real quick, in the chat, how many of your kids own their own cell phone? Yes, no, or thinking about it. Actually, Kimberly, do we have an actual poll for this one? Yes, we do. Okay. In the poll, go ahead and select your answer. I know that we have kids aged 6 to 14, most predominantly. More than likely, the older kids are having cell phones. But let's see what we're looking at with our age groups here. Okay, we have about 54%, more than half, say no. That means that it's probably, I'm thinking it's the younger kids. We've got 15% that are thinking about it, and only about a third that already have their cell phones. So this is probably a good group to start this conversation with. We like to talk about the camera for a couple of reasons. Number one, the cameras are a favorite of the kids at any age group. My 18-year-old has a 1964 Mustang he's restoring. He is constantly taking pictures of that. I would absolutely encourage that kind of behavior to continue. However, cameras can also be used for bad things at various age groups, even as young as 6 and up. Kids with cameras can be encouraged or tricked into taking photographs that we would prefer that they not, and sharing them. And once something is shared, it is out there in the wild and it cannot be retrieved again. So you definitely want to have conversations about appropriate and inappropriate use of cameras, and encourage them to have those conversations with you, and reciprocate those conversations. They should never feel pressured to sending any content that they don't want out there publicly available. So make sure that your children understand that. I see a question in the chat or in the Q&A. I will circle back to that in just a moment. One thing that you also need to encourage them to do is, if they ever make the mistake of sharing something, that they need to come to you immediately so that you can help do some sort of damage control. But it's best to upfront let them know not to feel pressured into sharing anything that they wouldn't want out there publicly. Teach them to use their cameras in positive ways. Like I said, my kid loves taking pictures of his Mustang and putting it on his social media. That's fine. One other question that has come up in these discussions is, so what happens if my kid isn't doing anything wrong, but somehow becomes the recipient of inappropriate content? We encourage you to immediately report that to either your school resource officers or the authorities. inform them of what has happened, and then immediately delete that content based on what they recommend. I don't think that they necessarily need a copy of that content, but they may ask you some questions about where it may have originated from, and etc. You definitely want to encourage your kids to bring that kind of stuff to you so that you can take appropriate action. That cell phone is in your name, you're paying the bill, and the last thing that you need to have happen is for content to show up on your devices that you don't want there. So have those conversations as appropriate as well with your kids when you're talking about cell phones and cameras. So let's see. Question, I'm going to circle back to that question real quickly. What is a reasonable amount of time per day outside of homework after school for screen time? Again, I would say that that is a household by household decision. My kids have access to screens a lot of the time, but they don't use it a lot of the time. And I think it's because of the way I brought them up. I kept them very involved in extracurricular activities, sports, and scouts and things like that. And they didn't have cell phones until they were in their mid to late teens. So they didn't have that access readily available to them. I tend to give them, as they were growing up, depending on their age, I was giving them half an hour of screen time a day, up to 2 hours of screen time a day, making sure that all of their other chosen appropriate activities were fulfilled. And a lot of times that didn't really realistically leave them any time for screen time at the end of the day before they had to go to bed. My sister's kids, they have to earn their screen time, and they're only allowed it to have it on the weekends. So they kind of bank it up, and then they get to watch maybe a movie on the weekend. Her kids are a little bit younger as well. I do not condone the idea of using screens to babysit kids. I hate that idea. I see it often enough, but I always discourage the use of a screen to distract a kid from other more fulfilling activities. I hope that answers your question. We are a little over an hour in. Let me check my notes here. I think we're in good shape. So once again, have the appropriate conversations with your kids about camera use and how to use it appropriately, and make sure that they understand never to feel pressured to share any sort of content that they wouldn't want available publicly. And make sure you keep the lines of communication open. There are things that kids will do where they will reshare images in ways that create really bad situations. So make sure that you're having the conversations with your kids that keep those lines of communications open and lets them know that you're there for them, and they can come to you when a problem arises or potentially is about to arise. So same thing in the gaming world. The kids get practice with reflexive skills, and it can help them build relationships and communication with others. But if it gets in the way of, like I said, healthy habits such as sleep or real world friendships or real world activities, you need to adjust the rules to make sure that that it's meeting the needs of your household. If you have somebody who struggles to end a game after you've told them to end it, that's when you really want to start focusing more on the games, like the sporting games, that will terminate after a certain period of time, rather than continuous games like Minecraft, like I was discussing earlier. A question popped in about cell phones. First, cell phones for kids. What are your thoughts on first cell phones for kids? Again, it's going to be a household decision. And I don't have any particular recommendation on one type of phone over the other. You would want to look at what your kids' needs are. Some phones are really restrictive in what they provide. I'm not opposed to giving a kid a cell phone that doesn't have internet service, something like a flip phone or a single or a minimal button phone that only has a handful of emergency phone numbers programmed in. If your goal is just to give them a way to communicate with mom and dad, find that kind of a phone and that kind of a service. If your goal is to give them a tool that they can use to promote themselves and their causes, then maybe something a little more advanced. Again, age specific is going to be a consideration. So look for what's going to best work for your kids. And then when you do make that decision, and I think I touch on this a little bit later, when you do make that decision to give them that cell phone, also let them know that not every family has the same goals and the same requirements in mind. Maybe your kid has a more advanced cell phone because they have gone through the steps that you require to learn about and earn that privilege. I always tell my kids, your cell phone is a privilege. It's not a right. You have to continuously earn the privilege to use it. And if you start abusing that privilege, then it can easily be taken away, just like everything else that we have in life, it seems. So make sure that you're getting the phone that most fits your child's needs and most fits your needs as a family. My sister has 4 kids. 2 of them have cell phones. The oldest and the second youngest have cell phones. The second oldest does not have a cell phone because it doesn't fit his goals and his needs. There wasn't a need for him to have a cell phone, and there was a family discussion about why he didn't need one and why the other ones did. One of them is very involved in extracurricular activities. He's the second youngest, and he's always in and out of the house, always needing a ride somewhere, so he needed that form of communication. The second oldest, he doesn't need that constant form of communication, so he didn't necessarily need a cell phone. So I hope that helped answer that question. I know it was kind of non-specific, but again, focus on what the needs for your family and your children are, and do a little bit of research to find out what's going to be best for that situation. I got about 20 minutes left, so we'll talk real quickly about being kind to others and yourself. We all know that kindness is the right thing to do. It reflects back on you, and it paints a picture of who you are. And the same can be said for everything that we do online. Whatever you share online is going to paint a picture of you and who you are. And if you want to come across in the digital world as somebody who promotes kindness and respects others, then that's the value system that you need to deliver on all of your media platforms. You also need to respect the privacy and the family rules and values of your friends, your other family members, and your peers in your peer groups. And educate your children to do the same. It's not just about saying nice things, but also respecting the differences between families and peers. Like I said, some kids are going to have a cell phone at certain ages where others are not. And maybe in one family, you're going to have the conversation about why your child doesn't have the cell phone and all of their friends do. But on the flip side, you also need to have the conversation when you hand them that cell phone about how you're getting this cell phone because you're ready for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your peers are ready for it. So have that conversation so that they understand how to respect those that don't necessarily have the same privileges or the same restrictions that they do. Kids love posting stuff about themselves, and they love it when they get likes and followers on their social media platforms. But you need to also educate them that they as an individual are summed up by so much more than just how many followers or how many likes that they have on social media. Okay. Like I said, I come from a scouting background. My kids have been involved in scouting for their entire lives, and they've done so many things out in the community that never ended up on social media. You need to encourage your kids to recognize their self-worth outside of the digital world, and make sure that you encourage healthy habits that are outside of that digital scope of the world in their social media groups. And on the flip side, again, promoting kindness to others, you can also encourage them to do more than just click the like button. Click the like button and then say something positive about something that they like when they're liking or following something that their friends have posted as well. Again, that falls right in line with the nurturing kindness and being supportive. Also, be prepared for the various things that are going to occur when it comes to things, youth that have been shown unkindness. Educate your kids on how to be supportive of those kids that have been bullied or have been the recipient of unkind words or actions. But also be prepared with yourself when maybe it's your kid that has caused that unkindness to occur. And I know it's hard to imagine sometimes, but what are you going to do? Try and be prepared with how you're going to react and how you're going to have that conversation with your kid if your kid was the one that created that unkindness towards somebody else. And then nurture kindness by showing them how that impacted the other person and encourage them to do better. There's constant bullying that occurs online, constant encouragement to do bad things. So try and get your kids to do the opposite and have those conversations ready to go. So when that unkindness event happens, that you're somewhat prepared to respond to it when it happens in your child's world. And then finally, we want to be savvy. We want to be aware of what is being posted, what is being made available to our kids and online. And we want to make sure that the kids are aware that just because they see something online doesn't necessarily mean it's original content or that it's real. It's very easy for the recipient of a message, a post, or an image or a video to just replicate that and repost it back out there, either as their own content or to share it to a larger audience that may not have been the original intended audience. So make sure that when they're the recipient of this type of information, you're educating your kids and even yourselves in some cases on how to ask questions about the content that's out there. Ask the question, teach them to ask the questions. Why was it made? Who made the content? What's missing? Is there something missing in the content that needs to be there, that should be there? How might different people interpret the message that's being delivered, the image that's being seen? How do I know the content is true? Maybe they need to go search for other sources of that similar content to make from better, more reputable sources. Who might benefit from the message? Is somebody gaining something from me believing this or looking at this information? And then, of course, who might be harmed by the message or the content that they're looking at? Educate them to ask these types of questions. Exercise some of those critical thinking skills that in some cases are not necessarily occurring as broadly as we would like to see them in our world today. And the more you encourage this at younger ages, the more savvy they'll be as they grow older and continue to use newer technologies that may emerge. All of these questions and more information is in the guide that we co-developed with the National Association for Media Literacy and Education. More information is available on our website as well about that, so we encourage you to go take a look there for additional information. And I'm going to kind of refer back to that here in a minute too. But we have a lot more content that's available on our website at the Internet Safety for Kids and Families site at trendmicro.com. I think I share the link here later on in the presentation for that. One other thing, like I said, my kid loves sharing his car hobby to the world. But we definitely encourage the use of good habits to post good things about yourself. If your kid is involved in a youth group, whether it's some sort of a scouting organization or a youth group for church, and they're promoting some sort of a fundraiser, use your social media to promote those types of things. If they want to share their hobbies and their sporting activities, use your social media for those types of activities. Be careful with sharing too much content. You want to encourage them to share content, but don't give away too much in the process of doing it. One of the reasons we encourage this, though, is that as they get older, maybe with this age group, it might be a little too young to be worried about this, but 10 and 15 years from now, it'll happen fast, believe me. Your kids are going to be looking at places like colleges. And the Kaplan Institute does this study where they ask colleges all sorts of questions. And one of the questions that we kind of key in on is when colleges are looking at admissions applications, the admissions officers, what are you looking at when the applicants apply? Are you looking them up online? Are you looking for a digital footprint and online content that those applicants have put out there? And this year, February 2022, that survey said that 66% of colleges do actually look for online content for their applicants. That's actually higher than all of the previous years since 2014 combined. So 57% of those same colleges, those respondents, said that of the students that they looked at, 57% had content out there that actually hurt the admission chances of that applicant. And then alternatively, 38% found stuff that's out there that helped their chances at getting into that college or university or post-high school education program. So these numbers should definitely encourage you to have some positive conversations with your kids. So when they do develop these habits to sharing content that's out there, make sure that it's promoting them and not harming their chances in the outlook of their future, because people are looking, and knowing that should help you kind of guide what they're putting out there and what they're not putting out there. And again, encouraging good uses of the internet, learning new skills, absolutely. The internet was initially developed to share information, and I believe that it still continues to provide that as an opportunity. I am online continuously doing learning for my own profession, and I'm certain that there's plenty of content out there for every other profession that's out on the internet right now. Promoting causes, I touched on that. Youth groups and any sort of fundraising opportunities, opportunities to help with charitable organizations, showcasing accomplishments such as, like I said, my kid, the example I always refer back to is the restoration process of his 1964 and a half Mustang. He bought it as a rust bucket that was stripped down, ready for restoration, and he's been slowly building it back up ever since he bought it. I think we bought it when he was 14 years old. He's now 18, and it's still not running, but he's doing a little bit at a time. It'll be a phenomenal car when he's done, and he's getting an education in the process. So he's loving that process. And then, of course, entering contests. In fact, we have a contest that we talk about, that we provide. It's the What's Your Story contest. It actually provides, I don't know that we have a slide here for it, but it provides an opportunity for your student to win up to $10,000 by doing, I think it's like a short little 3-minute video that promotes good uses and good habits. We usually have a topic that it has to adhere to, but you can do a short little video using that camera and submit that to our contest on our internet safety site as well. Visit our Cyber Academy. There's another good educational use. I was touching on this earlier. You can actually use these guided lessons. It comes with an animated video, a Kahoot quiz, an activity sheet, and a conversation guide for the teachers or the parents. We also, in select areas where we have volunteer personnel that can come to your schools, we can actually come into your schools and present 1 or 2 or 3 of these on site in front of a classroom full of kids, and have that conversation with the kids as well. So if you're involved in PTAs, PTOs, then you can have these conversations with the teachers and the administrators, and invite us into the schools as well. If we have personnel available, we'll be more than happy to do it. I'm super anxious to get back into classrooms and have these conversations in front of the kids again. I was doing it for several years before we went to this online webinar format. And of course, the trendmicro.com internet safety website is chock full of all sorts of resources, information for parents and teachers, and everything that we've talked about has some sort of ancillary material available for you there. And then, of course, we're partnered with, if you've been paying attention, the lower right-hand corner of the screen, PTO Today. They have a lot of good information on their site too, and I'm pretty certain we have links clicking over to their site as well from our site. So definitely go out to our internet safety site, gather more information, learn new skills. There's walkthroughs on various platforms on how to do stuff. And there it is, the PTO Today resources, internet safety questions and answers, information about cell phones. They've got more in-depth pieces of this conversation available throughout all of those sites. So, and of course, we encourage you to continue to stay active on your own education about all the devices you bring into your house, all the software that you bring into your house. Maintain those lines of communication. I kind of equate this, like I might have touched on this analogy earlier. Once upon a time, there was an entire generation that didn't have automobiles available to them. They had to learn how to use those automobiles, and then they had to pass on their learnings and their experience to a generation that grew up with automobiles in their life. Well, fast forward several generations, several decades, now we have an opportunity to be parents who may not have had the internet from the time we were born. In some cases, we are obligated to educate those younger generations on the use of these devices and the internet since the time that they were born. It's just been there. So you got to learn how to stay up to date. Go out to those websites to gather more information and learn new skills so that you can teach your kids those new skills as well. And that kind of brings us back to the end of our conversation. Looking for Q&A. I don't see any new questions in the Q&A field. But I do encourage you to go ahead and provide feedback. Again, we take that feedback, we incorporate that feedback into these presentations. We update our presentations based on things that we may have missed, and encouraging discussion from the community that attends our webinars and our sessions. And then if you're short on any type of security software, you can also include your email in the sign-in sheet or the feedback form for a chance to win a free year subscription for up to 5 devices of our Trend Micro Maximum Security. This can be installed on cell phones and tablets and computers. I use it for most of the devices in my house. I've probably got 15 or 20 devices. It's a pretty good product, and it provides antivirus features and security features to all of those devices. And it can also give you some feedback on how some of those devices are being used as well. So if you want a chance to win that, go ahead and add your email to the sign-in sheet or to the feedback form that you provide. With that, it's the end of our presentation. If you need more information, if you want to get a hold of us, internet_safety@trendmicro.com is our email address, or definitely provide feedback on that feedback form, and definitely go to our website for additional more in-depth walkthroughs and educational opportunities for you and your family. So I do appreciate you being here with us tonight, and I think I'm maybe just a minute over time. With no further questions in the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and close down our presentation, and I appreciate you being here with us tonight. Thanks all.